Good afternoon. We're getting right down to business here, doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with my buddy Randy Wang at 5. Motec on Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And, of course, the on-demand Motec on Money podcast and all the podcast platforms. Record-shattering day today and capping a record-shattering first full week of 2026 on Wall Street. Happy New Year. Stocks rising to record highs today with the latest December jobs report in focus right out of the gate this morning. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of 238 points to a record high close, 49,504. The S&P 500 of 45 at 6,966. That to a record high. The NASDAQ near an all-time high, up nearly 200 at 23,671. The Russell Small Cap Index and also the Mid-Cap S&P Mid-Cap 400 Index also hitting record highs today. Markets focused on the December jobs report, the big enchilada of monthly economic reports, as we call it, the non-farm payrolls report, which showed the U.S. added 50,000 jobs in the month of December. Payroll growth fell short of economists' expectations of about 70,000, and that pretty much has sealed bets today that the Fed will hold the line on short-term interest rates in less than 3 weeks when they have their next big policy-setting meeting. Bets that the Fed would hold interest rates steady at its meeting coming up on January 27th and 28th increased following that report. The nation's unemployment rate dropped to 4.4% from 4.6% in November. Wall Street also on alert for a ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court on tariffs, which, of course, could have a major impact on U.S. economic strategies if the tariffs are found to be unlawful. The court indicated, however, that its next opinion day would come on Wednesday, January 14th, so it's widely expected that that'll be the date that the U.S. Supreme Court will rule on President Trump's tariffs. Meanwhile, we're watching what's happening with Venezuela. Big meeting today with Big Oil at the White House. Big meeting today with oil industry leaders, with President Trump saying the U.S. oil industry will be spending at least $100 billion of their own money to rebuild the capacity and the infrastructure necessary for Venezuela to begin once more exporting large volumes of crude oil, and that China and Russia would be welcome to purchase those barrels. The big meeting today coming after the administration pressured the oil industry to re-enter Venezuela and begin rebuilding infrastructure there to export oil following the capture and extradition of the extraction, of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. All the big oil company players were at the White House today. Precious metals back in focus this week as the Burl-Ives trade, as we've been calling it, continues. We'll be playing silver and gold probably for most of this year, with gold at the moment hovering about $4,500 an ounce. Silver just shy of $80 an ounce. Palladium and platinum also moving higher. Both metals initially rallied following the capture of the Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro about a week ago, though price action has been choppy in recent days. And speaking of choppy, Bitcoin, it's been all over the place. Some of the air came out of the rally in the last day or so. We see Bitcoin right now hovering just above $90,000. In the tech space, we had Dan Ives from Wedbush on the air. He rang the opening bell on Wall Street yesterday and was at the big CES Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas earlier this week. We talked about tech in a big way yesterday. Chip stocks were back in focus today following a bunch of announcements at the Consumer Electronics Show, and also President Trump chiming in, reemphasizing his commitment to bring leading-edge chip manufacturing back to America, in his words. He posted that on his social media site. Shares of Broadcom moved higher. Micron shares also up. Intel up about 7%, and Qualcomm pulling back after rallying earlier in the week. And shares of Oklo moving higher today by about 13% as that small nuclear reactor company, formerly chaired by the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, got its first major commercial deal with Meta, the parent company of Facebook. And consumer confidence improved slightly in the month of January to reach the highest level seen since last September, according to the latest University of Michigan Consumer Confidence Report. Some California billionaires losing confidence here in California, bailing out of the state before voters have to decide later this year whether to impose a steep so-called billionaires tax, a wealth tax. This week, Sergey Brin joined fellow Google co-founder Larry Page in cutting ties to California. Keeping track of all that, Charlie Crumpley, veteran business journalist here in Southern California, currently editor of Billionaire Reporter at billionairereporter.com. Beverly Hills' biggest night coming up this weekend, adding millions of dollars to the local economy as the Hollywood award season begins with the Golden Globe Awards this weekend. I'll talk about that and the economic impact with Todd Johnson, the president and CEO of the Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now in this record-shattering week. Joining us live now, veteran market strategist Bryan Perry at BryanPerryInvesting.com and author of the 25% Cash Machine. Bryan Perry, thanks for taking the call. Happy New Year, and good afternoon to you, sir.
Happy New Year as well, Frank. And yes, it's been quite a week here, and a good start to the year. All the things you mentioned are all playing out, according to what the market's expectations were here about jobs, the Fed, nervousness about geopolitical events driving precious metals higher. And so we've got earnings season here on deck, and this is really, I think, the market lives mostly for this type of the season here, where the reporting season it begins in earnest here the week of January 13th with the big money center banks first to post their fourth quarter numbers here. So coming into this earnings season here, FactSet's estimate for the fourth quarter for S&P earnings to grow around 8.3%, and that's a very nice number here because it represents a slight upward tick from the earlier in the quarter when that was the estimate was around 7.2. So momentum going into the optimism for the earnings season, and we're also looking for revenue growth here to accelerate by 6.1% year over year. So very strong expectations here coming in. A lot of stocks have moved up in front of this. So, they need to make their numbers and raise guidance here going forward here. Profit margins are expected to be on average around 12.4%, which is still above the 5-year average of around 12.1. Information technology is supposed to lead the way with a 16.5% gain year over year, and financials are expected to be in number 2 sector that will perform with a 12.3% performance year over year. So this is all good, and I think that the market's ready for a nice earnings season here, considering all the choppiness that the investors had to endure during December and then the first few days of January as well. As you mentioned, this jobs report was kind of go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, on the air live with Bryan Perry, BryanPerryInvesting.com. Well, let me interject here on the oil names, which have been stuck in the mud up until the U.S. took out the dictator of Venezuela and put him up on drug charges in New York over the past week. It's been an eventful week, and we see the oil names moving higher again today. Bryan Perry, let's if you can take a moment and focus on those, since so many people are interested in what's happening there with Venezuela and that big meeting today at the White House with all of the oil company leaders there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we initially had a big pop in oil coming off, and then a little bit of a pullback here, and it's still in a range here, trading under 60. There's mixed emotions about this because if you bring in another major supply online here, we've already seen OPEC cut production here 4 months in a row, trying to keep prices above 60. And with oil trading in the high 50 range here, it's great business for the oil services companies like Halliburton and Schlumberger and other names like that in the refiners, which can buy oil for cheap and make a nice spread, the crack spread. Chevron and Exxon traded very well here because they can certainly they're integrated oil companies here and they make everything, diesel, jet fuel, chemicals, lubricants, all kinds of things. So I think that you've got to trade here, which the initial enthusiasm is good. To bring those fields on is going to take years because they are basically very dilapidated. Chevron has a key presence there already. They're already loading. Chevron is already loading tankers down there to their benefit. So if you had to pick one, I'd say Chevron is the early lead down. It pays a good dividend, about almost 5% yield on that as well. But also, the producers here in the U.S. and Texas primarily, you be careful what you wish for, because if oil drops, in the low 50s and the high 40s, their extraction rates are like in the low 30s, so their profit margins really get squeezed. So I think what you saw today in the White House was like, okay, this is all it's all positive for the consumer, but we still need to make money in the industry, and until the cost of bringing oil out of the ground drops further. The oil companies will be a little bit hesitant to give into, letting gas prices drop much below where we're seeing gas below $2 a gallon in many parts of the country already.
Not here, that's for sure. Not here in California. In fact, we're way up there, probably the highest in the country. And one thing that came out of that White House meeting today, I didn't catch this before, but Schlumberger looks like they've changed their name to SLB, simplifying
Right.
that long-standing name. That company originated in France decades ago, so that was interesting. SLB stock hovering around 45 and change, up about $1 today, and Halliburton also up slightly. We see Chevron shares up nearly 3 at 162 and change, and ExxonMobil up nearly 2 at 124.61. We'll certainly be keeping an eye on that one. And precious metals, Bryan Perry, of course, also getting a big pop again this week with oil, of course, in focus. But gold here at 4,518 an ounce at last check. Silver got a pop today of nearly $5 at 79 an ounce. What about the precious metals here?
Well, this is a reflection of geopolitical because the dollar actually rallied this week, and normally then you would see a pullback in the price of gold and silver, Frank. But what's going on? If you're watching the videos of the protests in Iran, that's really going widespread right now, and that's got the precious metals markets in a tizzy here, and also certainly the Venezuelan market, and that whole bringing Maduro back up to New York here and then opening up that economy is that's still in flux. They don't have really leadership down there yet. So I just think, but what's happening in Iran, and also that there's just really no movement here with Russia and in Ukraine, and so there's hot spots around the world, and I think that also that again there's no central banks are really reducing their debt, so we're still seeing a major hedge against fiat currencies losing value against mainly the gold market in general. So I think that we're still going to see gold trek its way toward 5,000 an ounce here between now and the end of the year, and then silver is a bit of a quandary because it seems like it's just gone parabolic, and even though it's got this it's got a good use case for EVs and other things. It just seems like there's a big air pocket underneath there, and I wouldn't be surprised if silver pulled back to around 70. But on any of these pullbacks, there's definitely inline buyers for both silver and gold.
All right, and it is, we noted, platinum in the spotlight too, hitting record highs at or near record highs today, as a matter of fact, at around 2,277 and change. And palladium has come to life recently at around 1,874 an ounce. Are those catching your attention as well?
Well, they are because there are definite uses for a lot of that in defense systems here, and also in data center operations, and also there's just more broader applications for palladium and platinum, not just catalytic converters anymore. I think that this is a market that's broadening out in all the metals here. I mean, look at the copper, for instance too. Frank, copper's just been an absolute standout here. Now you got this Rio Tinto and Glencore. They're in advanced talks right now to merge, which will create the largest copper miner, in the world. So the metals markets are on fire, and there's mergers and acquisitions, and the gold miners. I think there's going to be a lot of M&A activity within the gold miners as well.
On the line with Bryan Perry, and certainly copper, as we've noted on this program over many years, and I'm sure you've heard me say it, copper is the only metal with a degree in economics. It's also an economic indicator. So when copper goes up, that's also a bullish sign. This is our first conversation here in 26 here, Bryan. If you can zoom out to the overall economy here, obviously the stock market's a leading indicator, expecting, in this case, good things for the economy this year. What's your take on where things go from here and the Fed meeting coming up in a couple of weeks?
Well, the Fed's going to stand pat, and they're going to wait and see on this inflation number here coming out next week. We've got CPI and PPI, very pivotal numbers that'll be showing what real-time inflation here, where we've had a real lag in that. And then you had this $200 billion mortgage bond deal that President Trump announced today, telling Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to get in there and purchase $200 billion in bonds, and that just created an immediate demand for the bonds. And it drove rates down. So there again, you have copper's a big part of the housing market, and it just got that was another catalyst here when we saw 30-year mortgage rates drop below 6% for qualified buyers to like 5.87 today. And that's again, you're looking for these outliers about what's driving copper higher in the economy. We could see 4.5 to 5% GDP growth here. What I'm seeing from the forecast is that we're going to see an acceleration of profitability over all 4 quarters here for this year alone. And if that's the case, then the market trading at 21 times forward earnings here is justified because we're seeing rising sales and rising earnings. But also, more importantly here, and this is going to be the pivotal part of this quarter, Frank, is our profit margins expanding because of the application of AI. And I think we're going to see evidence of that, and I think that's going to also help the market hold together. Additionally, small caps. I mean, they're really spreading out here today, and it was a good week it capped a really good week. And you're seeing, banks, energy, industrials, cyclicals, and small cap world are outpacing the S&P by 2-1 right now. So as the Magnificent Seven is kind of taking a breather here, the market is broadening out, and this is a very bullish sign in general for the larger market in general. And I think that's what people have been hoping for some time right now. And then Additionally, the world of M&A is just all over the place. We've started the year with a lot of big deals here that are coming together here, and I think it's going to be a year of a lot of acquisitions and a lot of deal making.
All right, and you're right to note that the average 30-year fix dipped below 6% today for the first time in 3 years after the president directed Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae to buy $200 billion in mortgage-backed securities. So that is indeed a very big story. While we have some time here, Bryan, let me ask you the big question: any specific places where you are putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Yes, so there's plenty to do in the tech act. When tech takes a breather, then and they back and fill from these runs, it gives people a chance to buy really good quality names here. And I've been picking up some Cisco Systems here when the stock has pulled back off of its recent high. Qualcomm, it's broken out here. It had a big pop, and then it's pulled back here today a little bit. Palantir has been trading sideways for a while here. Now it looks like it wants to start getting up and running, and they pretty much have a monopoly on government intelligence. And I've been also picking up some MP Materials here. This is the largest U.S. rare earth story here. It's symbol MP, and the government's taken a big position in that company as well, just like they did with Intel. So it's when Trump and the U.S. government decide to put their money into these companies here, they tend to have a very strong tailwind. Really coming off, not much. I think having had some cash coming in here and really just coming into, because most of the money made between for the market happens, in the fourth quarter and the first quarter. So it's lock and load time for people that want to be. But being leadership names, aerospace defense, just had a banner week right now. So for those who just want to cast a net over that sector, the ITA covers all those names here, and Boeing has been a really strong performer here. Also GE, Lockheed, L3, all the names, General Dynamics. So. Military budgets, I think Trump said he wants to increase, double the military budget here, and military budgets around the world are increasing. So, that's a very strong catalyst for the aerospace defense sector. And as opposed to picking and choosing, then you can just look at the ITA as a good place to place a bet there. And really, in terms of coming off, it's just, you don't want to fight the tape here. The tape is strong. So, there are names here that could be in trouble, but, essentially there's a lot of bottom fishing also. And so it just is one of those markets where you just want to stay long, and coming into the earnings season here, be on the lookout for, guidance. And that's going to be about, whether companies are not just making their numbers, but forecasting, better things ahead.
All right, and last but not least, we didn't hit on crypto yet, but what are your thoughts about the latest moves, price action in Bitcoin and the other cryptos here, with Bitcoin right now hovering just above 90,000. It dipped below 90 earlier today. Ethereum back just below 3,100. Briefly, what are your thoughts on cryptos here and where they go from here?
Sure. It's been a real high-octane week, for crypto markets. As of today, the total market's around 3.17 trillion. And the industry is just shaking off some of this volatility that we ended the year. And so there's a selective rotation going on here, Frank, where Bitcoin and Ethereum, are holding this $90,000 level for Bitcoin and $3,000 for Ethereum. But money's aggressively rotating into higher beta altcoins here, particularly those in what are called institutional spot ETFs. XRP, up 27% for the week. Doge is up 23.5% for the week. Avalanche is up 17.3 for the week, and Solana's up 12.4. So they are, and they're a lot of these are filing for ETFs, and we're going to see that. And the approval process at the SEC has gone from 240 days to 75. So we're going to see more altcoin ETFs here hitting the market here over the next month and a half. And I think that's exciting for a lot of folks in this particular market that want to trade those stocks in their Schwab account as opposed to other types of exchanges. And this is coming, but it again, it's just not a Bitcoin Ethereum story right now. And it's similar to the Mag 7 having to taking a breather here as Bitcoin and Ethereum have. But again, the altcoin market is broadening out, and it's going to be an exciting year for crypto.
Well, Happy New Year, Bryan. Thank you very much for kicking off the new year on the first full week of the new year with that big news, records high for the Dow and the S&P 500, and precious metals in focus, oil, the whole works. So we got a lot to talk about. It's going to be an exciting 26. Thank you very, very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Wonderful to be with you. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you very much, Bryan Perry at BryanPerryInvesting.com, and also author of the 25% Cash Machine, live here on Motec on Money on 790 KABC.
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
The United States Soccer Federation presents the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
My name is David Goss. I am joined by two icons of the game, Megan Klingenberg and Ale Bedoya.
It's just been so fun
being a part of this community that we are building.
Hopefully we'll be not just a niche sport here in our country, but also even more respected across the globe.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We are excited to cover it all here at the U.S. Soccer Podcast. It is going to be a big year. Kling, red card, or play on?
a play on.
The U.S. Soccer Podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
The S&P 500 also at an all-time high of 45 points at 69.66. The NASDAQ near its record high of 191 at 23,671. The yield on the 10-year note at 4.17%. 30-year fixed-rate mortgages below 6% for the first time in 3 years. We saw the price of gold get another pop today, right now hovering at $4,518.40 an ounce, up nearly $60 today. Silver up nearly $5 an ounce, $79.79 an ounce here at the moment. Platinum up 10 to $2,277 and change, and palladium up $75 and change to $1,874 an ounce. In the cryptos, we see Bitcoin hovering at around 90,500, Ethereum just below 3,100, and Doge at the moment at 14 cents. Motec Money continues here, 790 KABC. Been hearing about this billionaire tax here in California. What's that all about? Well, this Billionaire Tax Act, as it's known, could be added to California's general election ballot in November, which would impose a one-time tax of 5% on the total wealth of California tax residents whose net worth is $1 billion or more. Now, while new taxes usually take effect after they've been approved, the proposed billionaire tax here would apply to those who are California residents as of now, as of January 1st, 2026. The retroactive date left little time for California's 200 to 250 billionaires to change their tax residency after they first learned of the potential tax in December, as CNBC has noted. California tech billionaire Peter Thiel, for example, announced recently that he had established a significant presence in South Florida over the last several years, maintaining a personal residence in the city since 2020 and an office for his Founders Fund venture capital firm since 2021. Also, NVIDIA CEO and California billionaire Jensen Huang, meanwhile, has said this week that he's perfectly fine with a proposed billionaire's tax. Of course, he's running the most valuable company in the world. But some other California billionaires are bailing out of California before voters decide later this year whether to impose a steep so-called billionaire's tax. This week, Sergey Brin joined fellow Google co-founder Larry Page in cutting ties to California. Florida, meanwhile, keeps gaining in billionaires. Keeping track of all of this is Charlie Crumpley, veteran business journalist here in Southern California, currently editor of Billionaire Reporter at billionairereporter.com. Charlie, thank you very much. Happy New Year to you, and thanks so much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Frank. Good to hear from you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Take it from the top and tell us about your coverage of this proposed billionaires tax that could be on the ballot, we understand, come November.
Yeah, so signatures are being gathered now, and of course it has to go through a process before the signatures are verified and the proposal is put on the ballot in November. But it's a simple initiative. So if the voters give it majority approval, it passes, and that means, as you pointed out, it means that if you are a billionaire resident of California as of January 1, you would have to pay an assessment equal to 5% of your total assets minus some exceptions, the primary homes and retirement accounts and that kind of thing, which frankly for most billionaires does not really amount to a lot. But they would have to pay that. The grace they get is that they could pay it over 5 years. As you pointed out, the provision that would mandate they pay if they were residents as of January 1 is already getting some pushback. I'm certainly no tax legal scholar, but already some have pointed out that this country has a long established principle of not allowing kind of retroactive taxes. They can't pass a law today that reaches back and taxes a transaction, for example, a year ago. And that essentially is what the opponents would argue is that, hey, that's not really fair to go back and tax someone based on their past residency. But nonetheless, as you pointed out, some billionaires apparently are already scared enough that they seem to be moving. They seem to be changing residence. As you pointed out, the Google co-founders were reportedly or have reportedly made moves to locate in income tax-free Florida. And there are a few others. David Sachs, the venture fund founder in San Francisco, moved to Austin, Texas, in December, for example. And there's been a couple of others that have been hinted at, but not really confirmed. We don't really know who has moved or if any have, but nonetheless, it would seem that they would be incentivized to do so.
On the line with Charlie Crumpley, editor of Billionaire Reporter at billionairereporter.com. Certainly they're paying attention to your coverage, Charlie Crumpley, and already making plans to, if they have not already, to check out of California in the face of just this possibility. That's a pretty steep tax. Would impose a one-time tax of 5% on the total wealth of California residents whose net worth is $1 billion or more. Peter Thiel also, right, announcing recently that he's going to Miami and has established a presence there. Anyone else on your radar screen?
No, that's most of it. Like I said, a few others have kind of made moves and been some people who are not classified as billionaires officially, apparently have made the move or are reported to be interested. I know the Wall Street Journal story said that real estate agents, high-end real estate agents in Southern Florida are all abuzz about it and apparently are talking to a number of people. So there seems to be quite a bit of interest in moving there. We did a story recently on the Billionaire Reporter about where we ranked the top 15 billionaires in Florida. And I was surprised to find that 14 of those 15 all moved there from high-tax states fairly recently, all in the last 10 or 12 years or so. Only one guy, Mickey Harrison, is kind of a native Floridian. Everybody else moved there. And they all moved, as I said, from high-tax states. So it kind of tells you that people do respond to high taxes. They don't like it, and they do tend to move. This tax in particular is, one thing we should point out, be remiss if we didn't, that this is not an income tax. I know the proponents like to kind of, confuse the two. This is a wealth tax, so it's much more onerous. 5% of your net worth is that's huge. Just take the example of In fact, I wrote an op-ed in which I pointed this out. If you take an example of a middle-class person who has, say, a $100,000 income and they got a one-time 5% income tax assessment, they would have to, write out a check for $5,000, which they wouldn't like, but they would, probably could do. However, if they had, let's say, a net income of $1 million based on, the value of their 401ks and their homes and whatever assets they had a $1 million net worth, they'd have to pay $50,000. And for a lot of middle class people, that's tough to do. And that's similarly true with billionaires. It's not like, it's a lot of these guys have, I don't want to say billionaires on paper, but most of their wealth, for the most part, at least in California, a lot of their wealth is in company stock, private company stock. And in order to come up with these huge billion-dollar, sometimes multi-billion-dollar tax assessments, they pretty much would have to sell the company, or sell a big chunk of stock. They might have to sell control of the company. It really has them kind of scared. This is really much more onerous than it would seem.
Well, we'll continue to track it with you, see if this thing gets on the ballot, and continue to track the movements of billionaires and what's happening, voting with their feet, it seems, here already in California. Charlie Crumpley, the editor of Billionaire Reporter at billionairereporter.com. We wish you, Matt Toledo, and everyone there at Billionaire Reporter all the very best for the new year. Charlie, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Great hearing from you.
Hey, I'm Chris Van Vliet, host of the #1 podcast, Insight with Chris Van Vliet. On the show, I sit down with the biggest names in pro wrestling, sports, film, and beyond. These are real, long-form conversations that go behind the scenes and beyond the headlines with people like John Cena, The Undertaker, Cody Rhodes, and more. We talk mindset, motivation, and what it takes to succeed. This is Insight with Chris Van Vliet. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Likewise, thank you very much. Motac on Money continues, 790 KABC. Happy New Year. The world's greatest New Year's party about to happen this weekend. Beverly Hills' biggest night coming up, adding millions to the local economy as the Hollywood award season begins with the Golden Globe Awards this weekend. It's the 83rd annual Golden Globe Awards held in the heart of Beverly Hills. Looks like comedian Nikki Glaser, a local favorite, will be returning as host for a second year. Big economic impact of all this. Joining us live now, keeps track of it all, Todd Johnson, President and CEO of the Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce. Todd, Happy New Year to you, and thanks so very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
No, thank you. I always enjoy being on your show, and Happy New Year to you and all your listeners.
You got to be excited about what's happening this weekend. We see the construction underway, the final preparations underway there along Wilshire Boulevard at the Beverly Hilton. And tell us what's expected this year.
Yeah, I was speaking with the general manager of the Hilton a few hours ago, and it's come along pretty well. There's obviously been a little bit more of a challenge this year because the red carpet's on Wilshire instead of Merv Griffith Way, which is obviously under construction for the new One Beverly project. But they've done a good job. They've got the red carpet down. I think most of the hotels are pretty full. I know there's a few big events pre-Golden Globes parties that are planned tonight and probably tomorrow, and then, of course, the big event on Sunday.
Very exciting, and that big project adjacent to the Waldorf and the Beverly Hilton, that is probably the biggest construction project underway in the United States at the moment, the new gateway to Beverly Hills, and this will all be right adjacent to the big award show this weekend.
It will be, yeah. The people will, they won't see a whole lot with the barriers up and whatnot, but yeah, in a couple of years when that project is finished, and you're right, it is, as I understand, the most expensive project in the country, upwards of around $10 billion. But when it's done, it will be spectacular. I mean, with the Mon Hotel and the food and beverage and the retail and the green space and the luxury condos, it'll be an entrance into a city like no other.
Has everybody gotten out the calculator, given the fact that the hotels, as you mentioned, pretty much at capacity this weekend and all the soirees around all of this happening this weekend? Any estimate of the economic impact?
It's going to be strong, and fortunately, Mother Nature is going to be on our side, and the weather's going to pretend. Where if a week ago it would have been much more difficult, obviously. But I know there's several of the hotels have after parties, events. They have events tomorrow in the day. Like I said, tonight I know of a couple. The restaurants are full. A lot of them have been rented out. Well, yeah, for private parties and doing so. It's a big impact, certainly to Beverly Hills, but certainly the region. In the cities surrounding us.
A big name in the world of chefs, Nobu Matsuhisa, who started his first sushi bar there on La Cienega Boulevard in Beverly Hills, known as Matsuhisa. He's taking a big role at the Golden Globes this year, preparing some of the dishes, I understand.
Yeah, he is. I've had the pleasure of knowing him for quite some time, as I was, as you know, with Lowry's a prime rib for quite a while, and got to know him. And incredible sushi. I mean, his restaurant, all of them. And he's expanded so much around the world in hotels, and he's quite the marketer, but he's also an incredible chef, and his restaurants are a reflection of that.
And speaking of restaurants, from what I've seen reported in the Beverly Hills Courier and other sources, looks like you're going to be getting some new restaurants there. Can you give us an update on some of the new openings there?
Yeah, we do. There's I think there was probably a 10 new businesses that will be opening here within the next several months, up until some toward the end of the year, and then obviously leading up to next year and the year after with some longer term plans. But there's an incredible Italian restaurant that's going to be opening in a location. They're going to take it over at the end of this month, and then they'll do a pretty big remodel, and then open it up probably September, October of this year. There's a couple dumpling places, one that's open, another one that's going to open, that seem to be doing well. So I think we're excited. We have a lot of inquiries. We're going to Miami in about a month, the mayor and the vice mayor and myself, the city manager, and we're meeting with around 20 businesses that have an interest in coming here, or that we think should come here. And we're not just talking about restaurants. We're looking at Art Basel, and our city is very artistic, and we're really trying to see if there's some way that we're able to do an elevated art exhibit, program, show that would probably be in several locations, because we don't have one large convention center, but we have luxury homes, we have facilities. So we're in talks with them to see if we're able to put something together.
See it tonight, read about it tomorrow, but hear it now on Motac on Money, live on the air with Todd Johnson, the president and CEO of the Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce. Of course, coming off the holiday season just now, you have the most spectacular start to the holiday season there on Rodeo Drive. How was the holiday season this year?
Yeah, I talked to some of the big brands, and there was good foot traffic. I think it's been a bit of a challenge with our tourism for the whole country, for that matter, but the spend was actually pretty good. So the average spend of people, what they were spending, has done well. I know I spoke with the director of the Dior location, which opened up earlier in the fall here. It's spectacular, and they had a lot of good foot traffic, and we're pleased with the holidays, as well as some of the LVMH brands that I spoke with, and then some of the small businesses said it was good, and the restaurants, I think, did well. I know Gravitas, the private club, had a strong New Year's Eve party, and some other Christmas parties, and so I think it's a good start, or it's a good ending to a year that has been a bit of a challenge for all of us, and most people carry a much more, I guess, cautiously optimistic viewpoint for 26. We think that it's going to move in the right direction, but there's going to be some ups and downs, and the city of Beverly Hills is fortunate. We can weather this probably better than some, just because of the brand and the name.
Certainly, and with the high end doing well, with the stock market at record highs heading into all of this, probably the champagne will be flowing. We mentioned earlier the Aman Hotel will be making a presence in Beverly Hills as part of that Beverly Hills One project. Can you tell us more about that? And that's going to be very big news when that happens.
Yeah, it's arguably one of the best hotels in the world. It's a 6-star hotel. It's going to be I believe it's 72 rooms. So it's going to be very boutique-y. It's in the third tower, so there's 3 towers, 2 towers, one 32 stories, one 28 stories. Those are going to be the luxury condos. The third tower, which I'm talking about, will have some mixed use, food and beverage, retail, the Armand Hotel. I've seen the drawings and the pictures. I've seen the one in Paris, and it's a jaw dropper.
That's amazing. Well, Todd, we look forward to that and look forward to this weekend. And congratulations, all the great news there in Beverly Hills. Todd Johnson, the president and CEO of the Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce. Happy New Year to you and your team there, Todd, and thank you very much for taking the call.
Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.
Fantastic. And coming up next, stay tuned for the 790 KBC News Blitz on 790.
American Skyjacker tells the story of D.B. Cooper copycat Martin McNally, who hijacked a plane and jumped out with $500,000. But that's just the start of this epic true crime saga. Now, American Skyjacker is an action-packed documentary available on all major platforms. Go to AmericanSkyjacker.com to subscribe to the podcast and watch the film. And look out for a new bonus episode of the podcast coming soon. American Skyjacker. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.